I hope you are better prepared for this than I am.
I've been playing Diablo Immortal. Yes, I do know what the game is and what it's all about, but I played it for the sake of showing an example of someone who has a bad personality when it comes to free-to-play games. In other words, I use myself as an experiment to show what it's like to be a person who struggles with free-to-play games and anything like it at the worst level. And as a disclaimer, I think you all should know that I have had therapy for some of these spending problems in the past and made sure I was mentally prepared to take on this challenge at this present time. I'm going to show you what a person like me must struggle with when it comes to games like Diablo Immortal, and hopefully this video can become another pillar of support to change how games are being made in the industry. Yeah, I know you're probably questioning how I can self-diagnose myself. Well, I didn't. I wasn't by myself. I had a therapist with me in the background. I made sure that I was safe mentally, and I made sure that I didn't go too far. I wanted to know how anybody can go back to playing free-to-play games, knowing the nature of what it does, how it siphons money out of your bank account. It coerces you to keep playing the game with menial tasks that you just keep coming back to. This is my experience with Diablo Immortal and my intensive study of the freemium nature of free-to-play games.
Since I have a couple extra bucks in the bank, I was like, dude, let's splurge on Diablo Immortal, build one of the best accounts, and make some amazing content for it.
But there is no head start in this game. I do everything a whale does. I am side by side with a whale in every aspect of this game. There is no pay to play this game. And if you haven't tried it yet, I don't know what you're waiting on. It's free to play.
This is destroying the franchise that we all love. This is encouraging this kind of stuff. This kind of stuff will continue if this game is successful. Do not play and support this garbage. It'll take a free-to-play player 10 years of playtime. 10 years.
Whenever I hear people talk about, oh man, Diablo Immortal is such a good game, but it's just riddled with predatory microtransactions, I think to myself that you are crazy. Not because you think the microtransactions are bad, but you think it'd be a good game if it didn't have them. Well, no, it wouldn't be a good game. Diablo 3 came out 10 years ago, and it's the same thing. What do you mean it'd be a good game?
But ultimately what we know is that Immortal has evidently damaged the company's reputation so much that now senior people in D4 are having to communicate to people that D4 effectively is a real video game.
Alright, so let's go ahead and get into it, boys. Let's go ahead and max out this gym resonance on the Blood-Soaked Jade and see what goes down. If this unlocks more resonance, I might not be spending money for a little bit in this game if it gets too crazy.
If you have a degree in mathematics, if you have a degree in psychology, companies want you to design their in-game shops. Let's just talk about all the things, because Diablo Immortal is, I think, going to be a case study in the future, especially in game design courses, for how well you can monetize something.
Blizzard has already gone far lower than it has already been since before the allegations and when I last played one of their games over half a year ago, that being my new player experience in World of Warcraft. As another disclaimer, this is also my first time playing Diablo or games that are like Diablo for the exception of Lost Ark. So here I am again making a video on another Activision Blizzard game with arguably the worst experience I am ever going to have with a video game other than games I've played in the past, being a flaming dumpster fire, for which it can be said that this game is not so much a flaming dumpster fire. But the point of this video is to explore the game in all of its crevices. That means talking about the game's functions, visuals, combat systems, and other subjects, much like a review, and really hit it with the monetization while showing you guys my struggles and tribulations with Diablo Immortal as a person who has mentally struggled with these kinds of games. Them being free-to-play, highly monetized games whose purpose is to guzzle down money as much as possible from people like me to to their actual targets for these kinds of games, namely the whales. So, with that out of the way, hi, I'm Syncweaver, and I've played Diablo Immortal, even though I shouldn't have. To understand why I had to say, even though I shouldn't have, let me share with all of you a little story about my history with free-to-play games. This little game seems familiar, doesn't it? This is Clash of Clans. Not my first mobile game, but certainly the first one where I spent a lot of money. As a lot of people may have already known, Clash of Clans was one of the most successful games that has ever come out on mobile. The premise was simple enough: grow your camp and advance your units so you could obtain characters like the Giant, Dragons, the Barbarian King, the Archer Queen, and so on. You use those units to attack bases that aren't protected and take all of their stuff, gold, elixirs, and so on. You win when you demolish the town hall and lose when all your units are defeated. The microtransaction nature in this game was deemed more ethical than some, but at the end of its lifetime, Clash made money. It made a lot of money. I played this game with a bunch of workmates some years ago. We had a clan and I was pretty much at the bottom. The game was free, but it asked you to play every day. I think if you didn't log in enough times, your base wouldn't receive the options of protection, but I'm not totally sure. I'm definitely not sure about that. If you guys remember anything about that, please tell me and forgive me if I got that wrong. The amount of money I and the other 24 of us in the clan spent was upwards to $50,000 to $80,000 between all of us, and for me it was between $3,000 and $5,000. This was me spending a little something each time I got my paycheck just so I can keep up in the clan. This was over the course of just 1 year, and if you think about it on how much money I was actually spending with that $3,000 to $5,000 and between us all the $80,000, you can imagine how much money we were spending every time we got our paychecks. I eventually moved from the area, thus having nothing tying me down to playing Clash of Clans anymore. You could say that I could have played without spending a dime, but the amount of playing I would have had to do just to keep up with my clansmen would have easily been 5 times more than they were playing normally. I had to make sure I wasn't left behind, thus the alternative effect Clash of Clans harbored over my playtime. Some years would go by as mobile games were flourishing. I still had no idea about my personality when it came to free-to-play games, so I kept playing them thinking my contributions, as little as I thought they were while bearing excuses for them, were supporting the development of the game and the developers who were working behind the scenes. I would then come face to face with my mortal enemies on Earth: Final Fantasy All the Bravest, Final Fantasy Record Keeper, and Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia, and do not ask me what all that Latin crap means in the title. Square loved using Latin when it came to Final Fantasy games, especially Dissidia. Hey, Syncweaver from the future. So I just did a little research and found out that Opera Omnia means complete works, which is fucking hypocritical, since Dissidia Opera Omnia has a continuous story with never-ending content. The fucking liars. To keep this story short, I spent way too much money on these games that I was playing for free. Again, throwing the ethical free-to-play around in my mind to justify the thousands of dollars I spent on free games was but a huge excuse I was making so I could spend more money. I want to talk a little bit more about this ethical free-to-play game design. I've gone across the internet looking for articles and any proof that ethical free-to-play games is a good thing, and this article really caught my interest. So this article was made by one Greg Kostikyon, and I'm sorry if I butcher that name there, but what he has to say is very interesting. He speaks about the values of having an ethical free-to-play development within your game, talking about the bads of how free-to-play games are really trying to turn and coerce players into something of an asset or something of a wallet that they need to pick out of. It's a venture of business for a lot of these people, and Greg wants to point out that there is a way to make value and success off of your game, even if you have to be ethical about it, which means less money but more long-term paying players. He talks about how there are some free-to-play games that are incredibly unethical, giving examples out there how some fail but gain a large margin of money. So they succeeded, but the game had to die within a year or even less. The article does give examples of actual successful and good free-to-play games, putting examples out there like Clash of Clans or Farmville and Facebook games. He also puts examples out there like how games will never die, like some MMORPGs, for example. He talks about an undying player base, that even some players will try to keep their game alive or will continue to play that game even if they have to find a way to fund the game to stay alive themselves. And now there are plenty of examples of games like that, but he's trying to make an ethical free-to-play in terms of something like that. A free-to-play game that is ethical, good to its players, and doesn't have to push them into paying all the time, though they will see a less gross of payment coming out of all of this, you get a long-term fan. Even giving us 5 pillars, giving us reasons why anybody would want to pay their free-to-play game. Reasons like because you've shown them the value of the game, because you provided them with an amazing and delightful experience, because you've responded and respected their creative interactions within the community, because they anticipate and hope for more amazing development in the game, and because they like you. What he's trying to say with an ethical free-to-play game is that you'll have a fan or a player who will potentially play your game forever. And I'll be honest, it's actually a good read. He's trying so hard to make sure that free-to-play games is not all that bad, but I want to set my sights on something here where it says let them set a limit. So for the most part, I can understand. I may not agree entirely with this article, but I can certainly understand where he's coming from. This part right here where it says let them set a limit is where everything for me gets blown right out of the water. What it became clear to me is that this article isn't so much as being hypocritical or being unfaithful, it's just kind of misdirected. It's not telling the whole truth of what free-to-play games actually do to a player. A lot of what he's saying in the article is correct, but it also means that they're still doing certain tactics that coerce or pushes the player into doing certain things. It's still psychological here. So as it says here in the article, why not be super ethical? The third time within a month that someone makes a real money purchase, pop a dialogue saying, "We appreciate your business and are very glad you want to spend more on our game, but you've already spent XXX amount of dollars this month. Are you sure you want to spend another XX?" This is kind of superficial. It just means that you're trying to build good faith and goodwill with the player, and at the same time, not really stopping them from spending that money. You're giving them a choice to still spend money, and oftentimes people will give that choice in. They will spend the money. In my opinion, there is no such thing as an ethical free-to-play game. They know what they are made to be. Free-to-play games are made for one thing, and it's usually for the success of making money, not for its playtime, for its games, for how fun it actually is. Those are just added steps so that people will stick with the game and still spend money in it. There are, however, some free-to-play games that act a little different, and I don't think they deserve to be under the flag of free-to-play. I honestly think they deserve a different definition, a different word, and I can't come up with one, but an example would be Path of Exile, a free game that you can play right now for free, the entire game. It does have, however, monetization, and that monetization is usually for cosmetics or for inventory, something that you can pay once. The game itself is amazing and fun, which is the reason why I don't want to put it under the category of free to play. I honestly want to just call it a free game with monetization in it. I can't find a definition for it. I can't find a word to define Path of Exile. I just can't, because I certainly don't want to put it under the moniker of free to play. And people have put Path of Exile as an ethical free to play game, but this is more or less just a free game. And to be perfectly honest, since Path of Exile was a crowd-funded game, people paid for this thing to exist. There has to be another name for this game's type. I don't want to call it under the genre of free-to-play, I really don't. But yeah, that's just my take on ethical free-to-play. If failure had a form, it would be me holding my cell phone in one hand and a credit card in another as I type in all of my passcodes and information just to spend money to get more gems. That's how bad it was. I had a conversation with some friends talking about my grand sum of money I spent on free-to-play games, and one of them suggested I lowballed the total. After speaking with my therapist and actually diving back into those early years, I discovered a very unheartening truth. During those times, I spent playing Clash and summing up the money I thrown away with my paycheck back in those days, and remembering the games I spent money on throughout the years, I discovered that I actually lowballed my original estimate of $30,000 as a grand summary over a decade of playing free-to-play games. It was actually much larger. I somehow buried my memories of a lot more games I had played throughout the years deep in my subconscious, and realized I had spent well up to $40,000 if not $50,000 on free-to-play games, and with my frugal Walmart, restaurant, Lowe's paychecks over the course of 10 years. Well, let's just say this was not a small amount. I had somehow thought that a little towards what I liked would be justified. Little did I know, I was spending more than I thought without actually thinking about the grand sum it would turn into. So yeah, my history with stuff like this was pathetic and weak. I never went flat broke, but more than a few, if not a lot, I went into the red. Did I feel like the money I spent could have gone somewhere else? Oh hell yeah! The thought of just putting a little into something in order to feel accomplished about a game that literally doesn't need your money was not just satisfying, but also addicting. A casual person will not think about the money they spend if the result is immediate satisfaction. This helps the dopamine in the brain push ever so little to give the buyer enough reason to justify the pay without any guilt. Because honestly, the purchases were without actually thinking things through and was more on satisfying a primal need to be entertained and then forgetting about those transactions later. And unfortunately, a lot of people instinctually seek entertainment in their lives. Pretty much most living things do, and free-to-play games are the easiest to obtain and even easier to supply this need for satisfaction we humans crave. I was a heavy addict without even knowing, and thus I put myself on the chopping blocks for free-to-play games to siphon my money from. If anything, I am proof of failure that not all people can just not pay and continue to play some free games while being totally satisfied with what it has to offer. In fact, there is more people like me than there are people who have the will to resist. $5, $3, $20, 89 cents. It doesn't matter. If you spend anything on a product that is totally free, then you essentially just made the product turn up with a price. Look, these are all free games, but in the end, they all made a lot of money. Tell me, how is this in any way free? I failed to play games just for free, and so have many others. Be you whale, orca, dolphin, guppy, giga whale, kraken, or a non-spending player, I think we all are being played in the grand game created by these so-called game companies, and I hope to prove that today in Diablo Immortal. And now, since you guys know where I come from, let's talk about Diablo Immortal. Believe it or not, I have never played a single Diablo game before Immortal, so coming from this game, I'm guessing in comparison, all other Diablo games are going to seem much better, and we'll see that soon enough, as I did play another game in the series to see the comparison between Diablo Immortal and Diablo 3. Diablo Immortal is a mobile game brought into the PC world by some real janky transition after the crew introducing the game was booed on stage.
Is there any plans to make this playable on PC, or is this strictly mobile forever?
Are there any? The current plan is to be on mobile, both Android and iOS. We don't have any plans at the moment to do PC. Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
It was co-developed by Activision Blizzard and NetEase, directed by Wyatt Chang. This guy, the latter company being infamous for releasing free-to-play, low-budget, and almost half-assed games meant to be played on mobile. Immortal was yet another mobile venture for NetEase, but Blizzard were the ones who had say on when Diablo Immortal would be released. NetEase, by 2019, said the game was pretty much done, and if a company says the phrase pretty much, it means they put the bare minimum of effort when it came to the game's development. To give a bit of an example how NetEase works, take a license for a game they somehow acquired, place them in gameplay that's popular and trending, then release it for free in a freemium-based model and make bank. They've done this for some time now, so if Activision Blizzard was looking their way, it can be assumed that they knew what NetEase was all about. Wyatt Chang and Julian Love, the combat designer, both said that they wanted to essentially make a Diablo 3 with all the things they wished were in the game before. Quality of life systems, I would presume, but who the hell asked for skeevy business practices and a pay-to-win model? Someone had better recheck their planning charts, and I think we know the answer to that. It's the people that are beyond Wyatt Chang or Julian Love, because these are probably people people who sit at the top in terms of making business, so they had no say but to make a game like this, so I can't really blame them too much. December 2020, an alpha demo was available for Australia on the Android device. Plenty would ask why it was only playable in Australia, but given how it is now, well, I think we can all take a good guess. The demo had 4 of the 6 playable classes and was able to go up to level 45. My guess would be that the 2019 build that was pretty much finished was not enough for Blizzard's standards and probably spent the next few years polishing and porting to PC using a country that isn't Europe or the US. Though funny enough, the development team outright said they weren't against the game being emulated on other devices, meaning they didn't care if users were using programs like BlueStacks, possibly because they knew that some countries were going to bring down the ban hammer on Diablo Immortal. In April 2021, Diablo had a new alpha test in Australia once again, with the level cap being 55 and having access to the Crusader. The Cycle of Strife feature was introduced during the alpha and was well on its way to being released soon, as Blizzard had stated they just needed one more test. The testing feedback had made for some changes in the Cycle of Strife. The Heliquary and the bounties had to be more engaging, while tweaking character progression for apparently a more balanced experience. I'm convinced when they said balanced character progression, I assume what they meant to say was we're not going to get as much leveling or experience from level 30 or 35 all the way up to 60, so that's what I assume they were saying. Either way, it's bullshit, and we'll talk more about this Cycle of Strife later in the video. October 28th, 2021, with the intention of releasing the game in 3 months, a beta was released for Australia, Canada, South Korea, Japan, and China, yet no beta was ever released in America or Europe for some reason, and this was the last test. Mysterious, isn't it? This build had my favorite class, the Necromancer, available, the Hell difficulty system, Legacy of the Herodrum, ironed out control functions, and the Awakening plus Resonance system for the legendary gems. The beta added a ranking system for the 8v8 battlegrounds, changed the Cycle of Strife, added the challenge of the Immortals, and was basically the final build with all the features we have today. If I were to say, this almost looked like they were trying to test every attention-grabbing function in the game and only pushed it out on countries who had much higher tolerance with less voice on the internet. Thus the reason why we had tests everywhere else but the loudest 2 countries on Earth. After it released on June 2nd, 2022, the story goes on with people who were loud on the internet saying the game was a microtransaction, hidden loot box, pay-to-win garbage dumpster fire, while places like Belgium and the Netherlands wasn't having any of that crap and banned it outright. And even though the game has the lowest score on Metacritic and is universally hated by most, if not all, Diablo fans, it still hit 10 million downloads, with millions of dollars already earned from the game after a few weeks. I'm going to assume that anybody who's trying to compare Diablo Immortal's first 2 weeks making $25 million with Diablo 3's 24-hour revenue of $200 million, I think they're just coping. Diablo Immortal will be around for a much longer time, and the revenue from Diablo 3 will just be a fart in the wind compared to it when it comes down to time. And nothing against anybody who likes the original Diablo or Diablo 2 or Diablo 3, all the power and respect to them. However, this is a free-to-play mobile game that we're talking about, and they make a lot of money. Give any mobile game enough time and they will make the billions. Okay, firstly I want to talk about the story of Diablo. I'm not familiar with the story at all. I've never played a single Diablo game before this, but I wanted to address it now before getting into the core of Diablo Immortal's story, and because story in a video game is kind of big for me, I play Final Fantasy XIV for fuck's sake. The game takes place in a world called Sanctuary, and though the world has been named that, it's quite the despairing place full of death and decay, and as of recently is quite sparse due to most of its population being killed off, women, children, men, doesn't even matter. That's 90% of its population, by the way. Whoever named this place Sanctuary really had no idea what they were talking about. It was originally formed by rogue angels and demons. These rogues wanted out of something called the Eternal Conflict, a war so ancient and old, some of them started thinking about desertions on both sides. Back then, it was only between 2 primary forces. Angels, sentient beings of order, and demons, creatures made from chaos. Both wanted to destroy one another, proving which side was dominant. dominant. The angels were law-abiding and had to act in accordance, thus they value too much on order and would seldom act out of compassion, leading to slow action and stalwart stances. If not for that, they could have pushed the demons into a corner, since angels, though less in numbers, are more powerful than most demons. The demons, though more numerous, are tribalistic by nature and can't seem to work together. Its hierarchy is that of power, where strength is absolute and rivalry is abundant. Because of this, they usually come into stalemates with the angels and often fight each other for seats of power or for their own desires. And because of this conflict, an angel by the name of Anarius and a demon named Lilith made plans to escape this conflict. Anarius used the World Stone alongside Lilith to create a world in a pocket dimension and formed it around the World Stone. After formation of the world, Anarius and Lilith were the first to get jiggy with it and create a product of angel-demon union called the Nephilim. Nephilim were creatures of chaos and order, which meant they had the potential to be more powerful than both the angels and the demons. This led them being feared, causing a split to be made in the rogue faction community. Some wanted them dead and some wanted them to live. It wasn't until Lilith went deranged and tried to kill not only the Nephilim, but the rogue faction of angel and demon alike, leading Anarius to banish her into the void and using the World Stone to diminish the power of the Nephilim every generation. After the incident, everything went back to peace. Every time the Nephilim gave birth to their children, their next generation, they would be weaker than their predecessors, or their Nephilim heritage would slowly dwindle and die. Angels and demons were back at the top of the food chain when it came to Sanctuary. Things, however, didn't stay peaceful because outside demons were being summoned into Sanctuary thanks to the Prime Evils, the most powerful of all demons. They had found the existence of Sanctuary and humanity, leading them to try and carry favor with the humans by starting a religion called the Triune. Anarius quickly realized what was happening and retaliated with the Cathedral of Light to oppose the Triune's religion, thus starting the Sin War, which would lead to the defeat of not only the demons, but also the angels. Doom, part of a lone human who had awakened his Nephilim heritage, that human being called Uldesian. Okay, wait, hold on.
Uldesian.
Okay, so that's how you say it. Alright, I kind of messed up there. Yeah, I'm gonna mess up for the rest of the video. My bad. His goal was to form an army with other awakened humans and group them together to be called the Edorim, whom of which were awakened by Uldesian, snuff out the demons, destroy their religion, the Triune, and bring down the Cathedral of Light, thus allowing humans to live on their own terms. And they did just that. Uldesian led the charge, which sent Lilith back into the void when she was summoned as the Primus of the Triune, and defeating Anarius, disconnecting him from the World Stone. All the while, a rip in the sky was raining angels as the heavenly host finally connected with Sanctuary, though this didn't stop Uldesian from sending the angels and demons away while sacrificing himself to do so. The high heavens and burning hells had a pact. They would allow the Nephilim to live and give them a chance to mature, so they themselves would decide whether to join the angels or follow the demons, which in all cases may have been a bad idea. Angels saw Nephilim and therefore all of humanity as abominations. The only angels who saw value in them were Tyrael, Ariel, and a very few number of like-minded angels. Demons saw them as walking meat puppets to toy around with. Thus the demons constantly ignored the pact between the heavens and hell. All this leads to many eons going by, until the events of Diablo 1 and eventually Diablo Immortal. I don't want to go into too much detail about the whole entire story of Diablo, but I will give you the short cliff notes if I can. And I'm going to try to get past this as fast as possible, so here we go. Diablo, you play as Aiden, returning to his home, finding out that his brother has gone missing under the cathedral, which became the home of demons and a passageway to hell. Aiden fights his way down, slays demons, his father, and Diablo, who uses his brother's body. Aiden would then become possessed by Diablo, which starts off Diablo 2. In Diablo 2, your mission is to stop Aiden as an unknown hero. You venture everywhere following the chaos until you find Aiden, kill Diablo again, and save the world. In Diablo 3, you're yet another adventurer whose mission is to stop the summoning of Diablo once again. Diablo 3, however, is a game I'm currently playing, so that's all I'm willing to research for now. A little personal note here. The story of Diablo is very interesting, and the fact that it's such a good story brings people back who are fans to play Diablo Immortal. It's kind of like a weapon to them. I figure they're just using Diablo Immortal because it has such a huge fan base to bring people back and see how many people they could get. And I don't know about this, but I heard there was rumors that Diablo Immortal was not going to be in China, which was their goal, I believe. So this is post-filming, post-production and everything. This is me editing. At the time of this recording, Diablo Immortal has already been released in China. Yeah, just nothing was said. There was no ads, there was nobody saying anything. They just released it in China without any big kind of ordeal talking about how they are releasing in China. Very silently. Don't know how it's going to go, seeing how there are some people already complaining about it in China, which is weird. But yeah, it's released in China now. But besides that, the story, lore, and universe of Diablo is very interesting, and I fell right into it. I love it, and it sucks to see that Diablo Immortal just basically pisses on it. But we're gonna have to talk about the story of Diablo Immortal now, so yeah, let's get ready for that. So, you're an adventurer who has come to this dark, despairing country, seeking to end the corruption in the area. You make your way through this horrid place and end up fighting cultists and monstrosities everywhere. Like, no joke, who thought they could settle a village in the middle of this shit? I don't understand. As you make your way through Death and Decay, you find yourself helping out a village who points you towards Westmarch, which is like the only safe place in the entire world for some reason. There you meet
Deckard Cain,
a traveling scholar who's come to Westmarch to destroy the rest of the world's stones. Oh, and if you're wondering how certain characters may be here and alive, from what I've heard is that Diablo Immortal takes place between 2 and 3, right after Tyrael destroys the world's stone, which is still corrupted by Baal? I mean, Baal? I think it's Baal, right? Yeah, it's definitely Baal. Baal? Sorry, I just can't get these names right. Now, I have no idea who any of these familiar characters are for the fan base, nor do I think I need to know. All I have to know is where do I go to kill several hundred demons? Cain sets me forth around the world where I make some friends and allies who help me along the way. Some live, some die. Some are already dead. Each encounter has me finding clues to where another piece of the world stone is, kill a few monsters along the way, discover a dungeon that usually has another clue or the world stone itself, and leave without actually saving the village because the monsters are literally 10 meters away from their front doors. After dealing with most of the world stones, you discover that Deckard Cain cannot destroy them without an angelic weapon or something of equivalence. So we go get one. Now, the plot here doesn't really have cohesion so much as they have the hero doing hero things in order to grab a stone while making the surrounding a bit better or not really doing anything at all. Like, in one adventure, we're cleaning out cultists. Yeah, good stuff. We're killing the cultists who are stealing blood to revive another demon witch person. And in another adventure, we're going into a sand tomb and we're fighting some skeleton guy who has a pet spider, but that skeleton guy escapes and we don't see him again. Look, the world of Diablo, from what I can tell, is dark and filled with anguish. You even witness a father and daughter die due to this evil and corrupt land, and not many places are safe to live in, not even Westmarch, which has a demon door smack dab in the middle of the city and is open because I was the one to open it. Death doesn't even save you, since there's even a moment in the game where you have to walk into the realm of death. I think it kind of looks like a grayed out screen to me, but whatever. And even there, your already dead allies can just up and die again in the land of the dead. How does that make sense? Oh, you know what? Someone from the Shadowlands storyboard must have jumped in to write some of the story in Diablo Immortal. I think I get it now. Anyway, after making your way into actual hell, you find an angel blade, free some angels that have been tortured for apparently about 1,000 years, and bring the fight to the big bad who calls himself Skarn. On a side note, Skarn goes ahead and says that we humans are a product of demons, and I totally had to wiki that. And this is when I had to stop playing the game and look up the entire lore of Diablo. The first thing I found out was humanity and how they were the descendants of an ancient and strong race called the Nephilim, which we talked about before. The Nephilim are a product of rogue angels and demons leaving the Great War for a chance of peace and mating with each other to make the Nephilim and blah blah. Yeah, I talked about this before. What was unique that Nephilim and humans, when they die, their souls go to someplace else if they are not claimed by heaven or hell. and who knows what that other place was. They surmise it was some sort of different dimension, but only a necromancer has a clue of what it is. Well, because of the World Stone, the Nephilim kept giving birth to lesser Nephilim, which eventually became humanity, and that's where humans came from, and that was my key to just dive on in through all of Diablo lore. Well, anyway, after confronting an upset angel who for some reason couldn't take 1,000 years of suffering, the pansy, and taking the fight to Skarn in his own domain only after killing his pet worm, which I don't think he even liked, I take him down after apparently being told that he was puppeteering me throughout the entire game. Okay, Blizzard. And after telling him, no dad, I don't want to run the family business with him, he dies. Diablo's soul lives again, and I get out of there while leaving one of my angel friends behind. I liked her, but she's dead though. So I'm gonna say that the story isn't the worst thing ever, kind of short, but not too terrible if I may say. I do like how if you play a certain class, other NPCs you meet on your journey who are the same or similar classes will comment on their relationship with you.
Another priest of Rathma? I assume the order is growing impatient then? Well, I assure you, I shall detain my former student. If you wish to be of help, perhaps you should start with that guard.
The girl was killed before I arrived. Tortured by your apprentice, I assume.
Yes, this does look like her handiwork. The body is still warm, too. I believe a reanimation is in order. Watch carefully. This rite is usually shown only to masters.
What I don't like about the NPCs is that they don't help you at all in this game. They don't even help you fight, even though that they're following you, and they will send you out into danger because, yeah, they're preoccupied with something else that they've made up. If I remember this correctly, I believe Diablo 2 and 3 has companions who can help you fight demons, but nobody except for other players actually helps you fight other demons if they're NPCs. But I do like the voice acting, for which I will admit is really good.
Alyssa, no. Oh, gods, forgive me. I am so sorry, child.
Thank you. I did not expect much kindness was left in these woods. Not since the Bloodsworn began their vile hunt.
You're welcome. So far, you are the only prisoner I've seen still alive. Why have they not killed you?
There is something otherworldly about your essence, mortal. And you wield an Archangel's weapon with ease. Perhaps we stand a chance of stopping Skarn's plan.
Once more, use heaven's light to destroy at their behest, exactly as they would have purged your world.
Your lies fall on deaf ears, demon. One does not raise an army or invade another world for peace.
More is at stake than you realize, mortal. The Eye of Anu has the power to alter creation. It was done once before, and the result was your world. If we are to combat a demon wielding such power, cooperation is vital.
Wasted talent if you ask me though. The only other complaint I have is that I wish I got to know some of these major characters in the game other than Deckard Cain and the blacksmith. Like for example, there was this really cool monk chick that I was climbing up the mountain with, and she was actually pretty awesome. Even though we didn't fight together, I knew she was pretty strong. It was fun actually having her around, but you know, this other guy had to ruin it, turned all her monk families and friends and brothers and sisters into zombies, and it was sad because yeah, she didn't make it. Yeah, and along the way you do meet other NPCs who disappear, die, or you never meet them again. Some you'll meet in side quests, thankfully, and some will die because of those side quests. So I can say that the story wasn't horrible, but again, I've never played Diablo before. I will say, after reading the wiki, I feel like some universal plot points could have been in the game, for which I'm guessing they're holding out on for future content. And I really want to know something. How are people still having children in this world? It's a horrible place. Like, way too many people are dying or they're just dead. And this game just kills people. Like, living and breathing air kills them. It's sad because I heard that the entire village from Diablo 1 got massacred in Diablo 2. That sucks. And I think I was spoiled a bit. I heard that 90% of humanity gets killed off because of a certain event, and I think it happens in Diablo 3. I'm just not too sure. Like I said, the story's not so bad. Of course, I don't believe the story is entirely the reason why people come back to Diablo. What I think is that it's more or less the gameplay, which is something that we will tackle next. Now, as a preface and reminder, I've never played a Diablo game before, but after playing Diablo Immortal, I have had the chance to play games like Diablo 3, Path of Exile, and if this counts, Lost Ark, which, by the way, I played before I even started Diablo Immortal. Well, so far I've found that I have an attraction to games like Diablo 3. Now, I've heard that 3 wasn't even the best one, and when I compare it to Immortal, well, I could say that they do feel similar, and Immortal does have better looking graphics, but as far as quality and the system goes, it's like night and day. Diablo 3 has a wider view, meaning their cameras pull back a little bit more, and it has a much fuller story, while Immortal is very busy with its systems made to keep players engaged with its battle pass and leveling/rank system. Diablo 3 also feel a hell of a lot better to control when you compare it to the PC version of Diablo Immortal, which is the version I played for this video. Diablo in terms of gameplay is a top-down action RPG. You use the mouse or your fingers in Immortal to move your character and use their abilities. For PC, you use the number buttons to activate their class abilities. Your main goal is to kill demons and ultimately stop Diablo, but Immortal doesn't have Diablo as the last boss, so they have another demon called Skarn. The main premise of the game is the procedurally generated dungeons that usually make the journey unique for the player, but even though it is RNG based, you'll find set pieces copied over and over while exploring the dungeons. Diablo Immortal, however, will not have procedurally generated dungeons traditionally. Instead, it'll only be within the Elder Rifts and the Challenger Rifts. Diablo Immortal also has repeating set pieces within those dungeons, but they're not too bad. You can honestly ignore all that and just have fun. In fact, if I were to be honest, I think Diablo Immortal isn't too terrible of a game. What I'm saying is that the game is playable, it functions, but even though I'm saying that it does function, I can say that there are problems in terms of its function, and even more so in its design. You can play the game using controls via the phone or even on PC. It's not too bad. However, this game was made for mobile devices. Diablo Immortal was made with the phone in mind, but was haphazardly brought to PC to satiate all the boos they got during their first time on stage. And as I said before, I prefer to play this on PC. However, there were some problems I did encounter. The navigation auto walk feature can get stuck sometimes. When I use it, I end up just automatically going to where I need to go most of the time. Great! But sometimes it doesn't turn off, which means after the monsters are dealt with, I just go to the next area, and there's no way to stop it unless I open up my inventory or click on the screen everywhere with my mouse. You might be asking, what about hitting that arrow that shows up on screen? Well, it disappears. I can't explain where it goes, but it just leaves. I also wish the mice icon was a lot brighter and easier to see. Like, I lose it all the time in scuffles and fights. I can't seem to see the damn thing when I have 45 monsters on screen. That needs to change. Sometimes the mouse action won't let go, and now I'm auto-walking via the mouse direction, and any mob I point at just gets hit by my auto attacks. That's very annoying. Sometimes, well, actually this happens more often, I can't pick up the items that are dropped on the floor, and they are registered to me. I did beat those mobs, but it won't allow me to pick them up. I have to open up my inventory and then close it, and now I'm able to pick it up. I think there's some oversight here. I also want to be able to see my mouse icon. I think I said this before, but I have to emphasize that I lose the mouse on screen. If Diablo 3 can do it, why couldn't Immortal do it? The bestiary cuts off info when you read the book. I'm not sure if this short form, but what the fuck is this? I want to know about the 10 types of skeletons or the 30 types of demons that I'm slaughtering all over the place, and there's nothing on screen that shows the rest of the information. Listen, man, I want to know more about the succubus. I mean, I want to know more information for research reasons, but, you know, and the art is usually spot on. I'd like to see the art of the succubus, but listen, I'm just trying to get more information here. I want to know. I just want to know. And even getting a page for the bestiary is totally random. You don't get to choose what page you get, and sometimes you get duplicates. It's kind of ridiculous, but still, I kind of want to see all the information in there. Oh, and summoned creatures will also sometimes do something stupid and walk all the way to Kansas in order to fight an enemy you had no idea was over there. You didn't even point them over there. And sometimes their direct attacks that you can aim will just go off in Kansas or just go somewhere that you didn't aim for. You shoot to the fucking moon sometimes with these guys. I just don't know. The controls on PC need work, but I'm sure the mobile version is perfectly fine. I'm not sure, I've never played it. Look, if you port a mobile game over to the PC because everyone's looking at you like, yo, what are you doing? Why didn't you have this on PC? Most of your fan base is on fucking PC. At the very least, do it right. Yeah? Had like 3 years to do this when you got yelled at on stage? I'm sure you could have gotten this one right. Right? The graphics aren't too bad. I'd say it's passable for a PC game that was ported over to the mobile. The only thing is when you get farther into the game. Early game, you have little to no hiccups when it comes to the quality of the graphics. In fact, it seems well made, but when you get further into the story, you start seeing shortcuts and lazy design because someone must have thought that they didn't need to put much effort into the graphics anymore. I'm just gonna name a few if you guys don't mind. Floating fucking grass tears in the goddamn world, copy and paste assets, lazy walk-throughable object, getting stuck on nothing, loading an area can cause the game to black screen, the world is claustrophobic, and loot being unclickable, making them unobtainable. I think I already said that earlier on.
How do I get this to go? Copulate, damn you.
Oh my gosh, is this floating grass?
There it is. Go, my child. Run wild and free.
What is this game? This is literally floating grass.
What?
This is floating grass.
But in your game?
Yeah.
Oh. Quality.
Quality gaming.
Quality Blizzard programming.
Cool. You're acting like you're surprised. Are you genuinely hoping it's going to get better or something at some point?
Booyaka.
Because I'm here to warn you, it's shit all the way through, my friend.
Yeah.
Oh my God. This is quality game development, guys.
It's literally the worst rated game on Metacritic right now.
I know. The thing is that it's functional, right? It's a functional,
of course,
and it does look better than Diablo 3, right?
Uh-huh.
But like, obviously the monetization is bad.
Yeah.
So
it's a shiny turd.
This is just some of the stuff that I've noticed. And for whatever reason, they usually have this in Asian free-to-play or MMO games, and I'm not sure why they have it, but being able to be knocked out of conversation, being attacked by mobs, and purposely placing NPCs in places where you can and will be hit. Like, why do they keep doing that? I mean, it's enough to say that the design of the world has to be small and compact due to the fact that it's a mobile game, but this getting hit thing while conversation is going is absolutely annoying. It's just not good game design. If you have an NPC out in the middle of nowhere and is surrounded by monsters, and it is very possible to get hit by said monsters, why put the NPC out there in the first place? Hold their asses up at a base camp or something, for fuck's sake. Diablo Immortal suffers from these specific practices due to its much lower budget, which was intentional, and the monster designs suffer from it too. What I mean is, some hitboxes are weird and can hit you while you swear you moved out of the way. Some hits are unavoidable because because they're too quick to move out of. And even though some of the mechanics are okay, like what you see in a typical MMO, some mechanics are stupid and are rather illogical. Like some were made to be unavoidable. I swear, I would be killing a mob, then a reticle shows up and I literally only have 0.5 seconds to react and I still get hit. Why? I will say that for the most part, after taking all the hits, because that's what you're going to do before level 60 anyway, trust me, this is the reason why you have 3 health potions, you'll push through normal difficulty easily enough and be at endgame with little to no problem. And when the difficulty raises, you'll probably want to start doing the mechanics because they'll hit a lot harder. In my opinion, some of these fights and their mechanics are too hard to understand. For those who are trying to move all over the place on a phone, it might be a bit hard, but for PC and people like me, it's not hard at all to avoid some of these attacks. Some of these mechanics aren't difficult, more like they're rather cheap, like when you're rooted in place and you have 99 demons ripping you a new one. And then there's this flower boss, which is essential when getting a vessel for your Horadrim. This thing, when it gets to half health, it starts sucking in players. The problem with that is that some people don't move or can't move fast enough out of the way, and it just gains a lot of health while it's sucking them in. This is a poorly designed boss, through and through, and the Hell 2 difficulty version seems to have lower health and seems to be much easier to take on since you can solo it. It's just all around bullshit if you ask me if the Hell 1 version is more difficult than the Hell 2 version. Another weird thing they have in Diablo Immortal as well is that players alongside other players in the same instance can interact with the same important set piece. The problem with this is that everyone interacts with the same area quest interactable, meaning if someone opens a chest before you, they get the loot from the chest and you get nothing. In the library where you need to collect pages, everyone can interact with the pages, so if it's crowded, and it will be, you'll be searching for a while to get 5 pages. FYI, when you do get those 5 pages, it forms a portal to allow you to have a chance to get a vessel depending on where it takes you. Notice I said chance, and that's in due part with the RNG because you might walk away with nothing. Like in my opinion, this is kind of dumb. Like, I want to pick up my own page and not have to go around inside this library for freaking hours or 45 minutes just to get 5 pages to get something that is essential for endgame, which is the vessel. It blows my mind that they did it this way. What they're trying to say here is that everyone has to work together, everyone has to get a page, someone will get that RNG base, someone will unlock the boss, which is the Hydra or the giant clay golem or whatever it is, and you have to rush over there, fight the golem, get that chance to get the Horadrim. It encourages players to stay in the same area and basically work together, but it just means that you're going to be looking for those pages again and again and again because it's still RNG base. This isn't too bad, by the way, because MMOs does this kind of thing all the time. You get RNG chance for getting a weapon in a hard boss fight or a mount if you're trying to go through a certain raid or dungeon. It's kind of a constant thing. I just don't want to play a free-to-play mobile game any more than I have to. Okay, so I did say mechanically the game is functional and it can be fun killing monsters left and right. The dungeons aren't bad and have some cool set pieces. I don't have any special love for any of the dungeons though, but I will admit that they can be fun. The game overall isn't too terrible, and at some point I've found myself enjoying the game, even when I reached level 30, for which I will say it was here where I felt the level wall begin. I had a pretty good time doing the missions and gaining experience over the course of a few days though. The wall, by the way, is when leveling starts to slow down. Reaching level 30 is fast, and they made sure it was done that way. And making it to level 60 as a free-to-play player takes a bit of time. But even though this was done to make leveling a bit slower, I wasn't too bothered by this particular wall. In fact, I was fine. Experience is given via completing missions in the Codex, killing monsters, picking up these blue orb thingies, the bestiary, the Elder Rifts, the challenges, all surrounding the Battle Pass, where you get a big whopping of experience every time you complete missions. Every time you level up in the Battle Pass, you get a bunch of experience that usually guarantees at least 1 level up. Of course, you get less experience as you go further into the game, but this is still the best way to get a lot of experience all at once, and it's always through the Battle Pass. To be honest, the sad thing is that there is a game under all this mess. The plot is okay, a bit short, the controls are a bit borked, but still functional, and the game just needs to push the camera out just a tad. Not sure if I can blame the devs or the higher-ups since they had enough time to iron out all the hiccups, but I can definitely see why people think there is a good game underneath. Unfortunately, the low-budget effort that teams through this messy game is quite noticeable, and perhaps they'll fix it in the future. when I'm not playing the game anymore. However, since graphically it doesn't look too bad and it functions for the most part, people will ignore its functional flaws if they just get their Diablo in. The sad truth is that most people are very tolerant to this, so an introspective like mine may not be so rare to find, but most people already agree that the gameplay is okay. I wouldn't say it's great, I'd say it functions well with a slew of flaws, but hey, you know what? The PC version is still in open beta, so I'm sure they'll fix it by the time it releases, so support the official release, I think, I guess. You could just skip the game, honestly.
It's already released!
Wait, what?
It's already released. It's already in China. It's not in open beta no more.
Oh, You know, I won't be surprised if this turned out to be the biggest part of the video, but as you may know, Diablo Immortal has quite the business practice when it comes to monetization. Firstly, it's free to play, and most free to play games have some sort of freemium practice at the core of the game. Diablo Immortal is no different, because in this section, I will not be holding anything back. I will go in full force on all the poisonous methods this game uses to make money, psychologically battle the minds of every player who decides to turn this thing on, and how the very nature I have is more common than what people think. I will go through the system and try to explain just what kind of battle I had to go through in order to maintain my free player experience, and I want to reference again that my mental fortitude is very weak to these kinds of things. I had friends to check up on me, and even my therapist on speed dial. I had to take major cautions to not fall back on my frugal ways, because no matter how many times I want to tell myself that I'm stronger than this, I know the truth of my nature, and I want as many people as possible to know how it mixes badly with games like these. When someone gambles, they are taking a risk or stake in something in hopes of getting a positive outcome. The action of gambling has all sorts of problems connected to it, and has put thousands of people in debt, or at least made them just a bit poorer. When someone gambles their money in slots, sports, or any activity that has a random outcome as a possibility, that someone is more likely hoping for the positive outcome rather than the negative. I mean, who gambles to lose? Now, many of you would say that free-to-play games and freemium games do have a net positive, and that's when you get something you want after placing a certain amount of money down to get it. However, that net gain from free-to-play games are for a positive feeling you'll have that will only stay positive until you feel the need to go for another thing, and another thing, and another thing, and you see the problem here. Meanwhile, you're basically cleaning yourself out of something that is actually important to you. Your money. Gambling for the most part usually has something valuable at stake when it comes to taking the risk. Free-to-play games may have a value to some people, and more than enough games actually do have something in it that can be sold for cash, but for free-to-play games, it's banal and pointless. What I'm saying is that it's easy to use the word gambling when describing free-to-play or gacha games. There really isn't anything to gain other than a dose of dopamine to the brain for the slight blip of satisfaction, whereas gambling usually has something valuable at risk being put at stake, where you can get a return and become positive out of this risk. Meaning, when it comes to gambling, they're usually putting money at risk, and we even have professional gamblers out there that make their career on gambling. Now, that's not the word I would usually use. Gambling doesn't describe free-to-play, freemium, or gacha games to me. Instead, I think people should be using another word to describe this whole thing. What I would argue should be the main word to be used to describe free-to-play, freemium, and gacha games is spendthrift. The definition means spending money freely or foolishly, and it usually describes the person. And seeing how we don't have a definitive word that talks about spending money freely that is so close to spendthrift, and it is a noun, I'm willing to use that word over gambling, since I think this is the closest synonym I can think of that is closer to free-to-play, gacha, and freemium than gambling. And though this word does not exist in any dictionary, I would even go so far as to say that this very activity of free-to-play is spendthrifting, just the act of freely but foolishly spending one's money. You can still call it gambling, and it's easier, but I would say that the person who is gambling is basically just a spendthrift, and I would relate it to a word that's not even real as spendthrifting. Okay, and with that out of the way, let's take a look at Diablo Immortal's most important currency in the game. Doubtless you already know about the 22 different currencies that permeate this gaming chimera. The most important one though are the Eternal Orbs. These purple balls are the RMT of the game as you spend real money to obtain these little pests. They are basically used to buy almost anything, and like everything in a free-to-play game, they are just one piece of the shit pie that is their monetization. The way they are marketed is that after a certain point in the game, you will be encouraged to buy these orbs along with other resources that will give you a leg up in Diablo Immortal. The orbs will be bundled with other important resources. The most important one though is probably the Eternal Legendary Crests. These crests are actually the third types of crests in the game. Counting the Eternal Legendary Crests, we have regular crests that do not guarantee a very special item when activating an Elder Rift, more on that later, and Legendary Crests, which are actually different from the Eternal Legendary Crests. Legendary Crests guarantee a legendary gem, which is the main goal of exploring the Elder Rifts, and basically are the main power-ups of the game, making them the most important thing to obtain. Both types of legendary gems can be used to do something called a 10 crest run, or a 10 drop multiplier, something other free-to-play games do to incentivize collecting, and thereby having the player spend hours in-game collecting their resources, or spending money to get the amount so that they can do the multi-10 drop. This also cooperates with the shop, since the number of paid resources will never be the exact amount. You either go over or under the amount you need to get it just right. Another means of psychological manipulation, since I fell for this a lot. The problem with legendary crests, however, is that you cannot take these gems and sell them in the auction, a place where one sells items for a little platinum on the side. Platinum, which is the secondary currency that you can earn in-game and you can use at auctions. This is just another means for free-to-play players to buy what they normally can't get, since the auction house does not use your gold. And unfortunately, the auction house can only be used by those who paid for something or has something that has been paid for. Let me explain. When it comes to selling anything in the auction house, especially legendary gems, you must have gotten them from a rift using Eternal Legendary Crest, not Legendary Crest, and obviously regular crest, but the type of crest you can only get when you fork over the cash and use their in-game RMT currency. The absolute absurdity of this auction house is BS beyond ludicrous and borders on the line of crazy. That's a whole system in the game free-to-play players cannot access because they play for free. Of course, they get a few platinum on the side, but it'll never be enough because the auction house has high prices, basically saying, give us money, you freeloading poor gamer hobo. And this is notwithstanding the bundles, but somehow they have a percentage on these bundles and purchases. Like, look at this. Easily another tactic they like to use in order to trick the player into thinking they're getting a great price for what amounts to a digital sparkler. I've never seen numbers like these. Like, how is this 800% more value in its sales when it's fucking 89 cents? Is being at 89 cents instead of $7.98 a huge advantage when they're also charging prices like this, and even this for similarly made bundles? I can't even fathom what some kid might say when explaining this to their parents. Hey look mom, this is a steal! It's only 89 cents! Like, that's actually messed up in all types of ways. You're literally manipulating the numbers and the thought process of somebody who's looking at these numbers, thinking that they're actually getting something before it changes later on, which it will never change. That 800% will probably stay 800% forever. And these bundles will usually show up every time you beat a dungeon, and it's annoying. It really is annoying. They even say, hey, now you have access to this bundle, why not purchase it? Fuck you, game. All this so that we have access to Eternal Orbs. And this is something that we've seen from other free-to-play games. Another form of currency which gives access to the best things you can ask for, and it makes game companies so much money. Oh, I'm sorry. You'll have to excuse me for saying game company. These are not game companies anymore. I've said this once before, but I've stated that companies like Activision Blizzard aren't game companies, but are companies that make games. Blizzard have long since given up that moniker ever since they were bought out by Activision. The shifting in workers, the firing of them by the hundreds, and the ill practice from within along with a skeevy work environment. No, not a game company, but just a company that happens to sell games. Now, I may have my own opinion on ActiveBliz, and it may hold sway in my opinion with Immortal, but even if I didn't know who made it, or if the company held a good reputation, I would still admonish this game for what it is, and and what it could possibly do in gaming culture. Okay, now before I go on too long with that, I want everyone to focus their attention to the legendary gems. Let's focus back on that. As we all know, they help the player go beyond the power they need to take on challenges in the game, PvE or PvP. The gems are actually so tuned up that a maxed out 5-star gem can outdo people in PvE and PvP who are reliant on gear and Paragon.
To get that head start, to pay money. But there is no head start in this game. I do everything a whale does. I am side by side with a whale in every aspect of this game. There is no pay to play this game. And if you haven't tried it yet, I don't know what you're waiting on. It's free to play.
Let's not fool ourselves. Legendary gems are the crux that brings the whole thing down for Diablo Immortal, with people like this trying to advocate for their existence and how they work when comparing free to play and paid. And don't get me wrong, I don't dislike this person. In fact, I think he's a rather nice person outside of his channel, but he's talking about how people can keep up with other people who have maxed out gems in PvP while being free to play, and that's just not possible. You see, there's this thing called resonance that are found within the properties of a legendary gem. Resonance has a passive effect on players' base stats. The better the gem, the stronger the player. As described here on gamerguide.com, most gear generally gives you flat bonuses to your damage or life, as well as having a magic property and potentially a legendary property. In addition, equipment will give you attribute bonuses with rare, higher level equipment granting higher attribute bonuses. Your resonance score modifies the base attribute bonuses your equipped gear grants you, with a higher resonance score yielding a higher percentage bonus to your attribute scores. Since many other derived stats like armor, armor penetration, combat rating, damage, life, potency, and resistance are directly influenced by your attributes, your resonance score is immensely important and does much to determine your overall effectiveness in combat. Basically, your gems make you go brr. There is no way any player who is playing Diablo Immortal is not using a legendary gem, and you can obtain them in all kinds of ways. The most common way is of course through the Elder Rift via legendary crest or eternal legendary crest. You can also craft them at the gem shop via the apprentice, purchase them off the auction house, obtain them through claimed rewards in the battle pass, purchase ones through eternal orbs of course, and finally through the apprentice in the jewel shop once again, but through trading of Fa runes. Fa runes are a specific rune that is needed for free to play players to obtain 5-star gems, or should I say could land you a 5-star gem. It's just not likely at all because the amount of grinding you'll have to do is absurd, and the likelihood of getting a 5-star gem through these means is as likely as going through an Elder Rift, which is 0.001%. It's absolutely fucking ridiculous. So what you're telling me is that since you're a free to play player, what you want to do is to grind the living hell out of the Elder Rift, right? And then you're going to get all these runes, right? Which you can get for specific legendary gems, or if you want to get a chance of a 5-star legendary gem, you need to get this dust, which you are limited per week. Take it to this merchant who will give you a specific rune, which you need a lot of dust for. Take 22 of them to the apprentice, and you can trade that in to have a chance to get a 5-star legendary gem, which is not very likely because it's the same likelihood as you would in an Elder Rift if you had a legendary crest. So it doesn't even matter. It's even... oh god, my head. Okay, let's just move on. The Horadrim isn't so bad, but it still requires resources to obtain via specific gems and leveling up through yet another means of powering up. In this case, these gems are used to upgrade even more stats that need to be found while exploring the world in the form of vessels, for the exception of one, which is held by RNG. The adventure to come through here and collect your gems isn't bad, something that can be done in like 5 minutes, but the caveat here are the keys. These keys open the chests at the end of the dungeon. However, it's not enough. You can get more keys through achievements and doing the dungeon the next day as the mobs drop them, but you won't have enough to open the rest of the chests. Oh, and the gems that drop from the chest go from 5 pieces to 10 to 15, which seems fine until you check how much they need to level up the Horadrim to max. It's a lot. This will have you contemplating whether you want to use your platinum pieces, because you can use them here too. And they are yet another currency that should be saved because you can use them at the auction house. Plus, they'll be needed to upgrade your rank 5 gems. Again, the Horadrim is not so bad, but the keys and collecting the keys is something else. Sometimes you might want to save those keys up to weeks if you're a free-to-play player so that you can use them all at once in the hundreds, so that you have a better chance of getting one of the other vessels that you can only get through these treasure chests. Again, that RNG I was talking about. Of course, if you have the platinum, you could just use the platinum to open all the chests you want, and platinum can also be bought off the goddamn shop. It always comes back down to the damn shop. Alright, this is a little side note here. I wanted to talk about my time playing this game and how I had to jot down notes in order to see where I lapsed or almost lapsed in judgment, and I had to stop playing the game. I literally did had to write down all the times where I almost got tempted and had to shut down the game. One of the ways that I was advised was to jot down what was tempting me to spend money in the game, shut it down, and come back after 2 or so hours when I felt like I wasn't thinking about that thing that coaxed me into trying to spend more money. The amount of times that I could have been tempted into spending money was up to like 20, and I had to put multipliers next to them because it happened multiple times. This is the reason why it took me so long to level up to max. Usually I'm really good at it because, you know, I play an MMO, but at this case it took me a long time because I had to stop over and over and over again, and I had to feel the need to play the game without being tempted again. This is the reason why I said that I shouldn't be playing this game. It's dangerous for my money and my finances if I played games like this. This is the reason why I had to stop playing over a year ago. I can't play games that are free to play, but I wanted to show an example of someone who really is loose or as casual as you can get, can just fall right into the trap. It's a problem for sure, but it's also a problem that's pretty common. A lot of people who are just spendthrifting their way through life, or are just spendthrifts, and they don't know what to do with their money, and they can do so much good with that money. And for casual people who don't make as much money, this is very dangerous. I know a lot of people say that this is basically just gambling, but I think it's a little bit more than that. This is something that's easily accessed, where if you go to a casino, you have to be of age. This is something that any person, including a child, can get into and start getting themselves into trouble. This is something that does not have a hotline for you to call, even though it is similar to gambling when it comes down to the effects and what it can do to a person. This is the reason why I want to make this video, and the reason why I'm going through this psychological warfare, to put my mental fortitude on the chain and challenge so that people will see just how bad it can be. Diablo Immortal is a game that was literally created to take advantage of people's money and how they spend money. And if there are other means and other secret means like the Herodrum, even though it looks so innocent, well, I will find it. The reason why I'm telling you guys this now, an hour into the video, is because I wanted to show you just how impassioned I am about this whole entire thing. We're going to be going into the legendary gems once more, because there's still more to talk about when it comes to that system. Now, if you find someone who has a rank 10 5-star legendary gem, the potential resonance will be up in the thousands and put your Paragon 30 and higher gear to shame. They could even be Paragon 5 with armor at a low level, but because their resonance is higher than yours, they'll come out on top, especially in PvP. Plenty of people have tried to rectify this by saying a free-to-play player can use the random legendary gem craft with the fire runes to get a 5-star, and that is true, but the drop chance on that is literally below 1%. Now, PvP was the hardest thing to get information on, and only because I know I would get demolished or carried by someone who was using the best stuff due to them spending money. Not a fan of that. I'm more on the appreciation of skill rather than equipment. This is unfortunately not the king's avatar. So, with the many dealings of gems, I was contemplating over and over on just how much I should be spending in order to not be left behind. The alternative was to grind hours on hours while at work to make sure I could make it to endgame and find people to do Hell 1 dungeons with, or grind the living hell out of the Elder Rifts. To explain, by the way, when one obtains level 60 in Diablo Immortal, they have the ability to change the difficulty of the entire world, which also lets them change the difficulty of dungeons. The difficulty is called Hell, or Hell 1, Hell 2, Hell 3, and so on. The higher the difficulty, the more experience and rewards you will get. Legendary gems are not included. This is also a form of psychological manipulation. We all know it as FOMO. We all know FOMO, you know, the fear of missing out.
These are 5 of the recent characters released in Genshin Impact, and the amount of money they made in a single day. 15 million for Zhongli, 9 million for Albedo, 14.8 million in Gun. This is one day.
This is something used as a weapon from those using free-to-play as a base for their game. FOMO is normally weaponized in many ways when it comes down to the core of gameplay. For Diablo Immortal, it's missing out on in-game activities and being able to do it at a proper power level. Free-to-play games do this all the time, and it doesn't even have to be in-game for it to work. Some activities in some games involve being powerful enough to take on the challenge, and some of these challenges are limited on time and date, meaning they have a limited course of days where you can be active with these events. The City of Opera Omnia does this all the time. They have something called banners, where for a limited amount of time, you can loot box your chance in getting a weapon you're looking for. Of course, it's RNG, and of course, it uses separate currency that forces you to either pay or spend a lot of time playing in order to grind up for a chance to roll. There are also events where you can experience their not so important non-canon story scenarios. This is also a means to captivate players into continuous play. Now, something like this isn't bad. Games that are not free-to-play games uses this all the time. Most of the time, it's an MMO. Final Fantasy XIV uses this method, and sometimes you don't even have to pay for the expansion, so it's a whole other experience. The trial version of 14 is very limited to some of these events, but there are a lot of access for trial players to get into these events. These events in 14 do last for a while, and to be very fair with Dissidia Opera Omnia, their events also last for a good long time as well. The problem is when the events come to an end, and you won't be able to get those prizes or the rewards when the event ends, and it happens all the time in free-to-play games. And unfortunately for me, this is the type of content that kept me coming back for more. Even when I say that it's pointless, I kept coming back to these events. I couldn't control myself. It's the rewards to these events that keeps me coming back. Time is always what's universally spent here, and being able to get the rewards can be a positive experience. Is it that way in Diablo Immortal? Well, it's too early to tell. The form of FOMO that Diablo Immortal usually have is activated world bosses. But the biggest form of FOMO is not being able to play with everybody else in Hell 1 or Hell 2 or Hell 3 because of your Paragon and because of how much you need to play to get up to a certain Paragon. The closest thing that I felt was probably the time-gated events that I had to go through when I became a Shadow. Certain times have these events where one can accumulate rapport for the Shadow. For me, it was Raid the Vault, the Battleground, which I won't be attending due to certain reasons, Assembly, Rite of Exile, and Shadow War. I'd say Raid the Vault is the biggest one for me. I can't always make it on their watch since their time clashes with my schedule, so it induces a kind of FOMO in me due to not being able to attend. I have done Raid the Vault, mind you, and loved it, to be honest. You go around raiding the vault of your opposition, the Immortals, and basically take their stuff. The opposition, however, are real players who can be alerted to your location and stop you from raiding even more, a form of PvP which became a broken mess after a while. Hi, Syncweaver from the future. Now, this part I was supposed to talk about the whole Immortals versus Shadow thing, but I'm going to skip the story because it's a little too long and it takes up a lot of the video and we're already over an hour, so we'll just get to the brass taxes of things and talk about the mechanics of Immortals and Shadows. PvP is heavily dominated by those with money, and this anxiety is the reason why I will probably never participate in any of the PvP events. Though I did do Raid the Vault. You can join these groups called Dark Clans, having up to 100 people, and even if I do join one and win the rights to become an Immortal, it would be like standing there as a leech, since I did nothing to be with the winners. And so I leave Battlegrounds to the whales and high spenders, thus only using the Shadow Contracts, Path of Blood, Assembly, and I'm not sure about the Vault anymore, as a means to get some stuff and experience, for which I probably won't be part of since by now I've uninstalled the game. This is probably the only form of FOMO that I can think of, which is through PvP, but to be honest, I don't think it's too bad. Joining the Shadow is an opt-in event, and winning is all up to who has the biggest wallet for ultimate victory. There's always a way to win the lottery to become a Shadow, so there's no need to stress over it. They have the lotteries all the time, and if you don't get in, just try again next time, and you'll get in eventually. You just won't have access to the Shadow exclusive events. That's about it. Also, the Immortals get their own resources, thus raising the distance between players, a hierarchy if you would. Okay, so this is the part where I changed the script because I actually did do PvP, and I have a bit to say about it. I always thought that PvP was 1 part preparation, 2 part skill. Diablo Immortal says screw that and makes it 3 part 100% preparation, meaning the players better have the best stuff or they're likely to be cooked on the field. This is a huge trigger for me. Like, imagine playing Call of Duty and you have equipment that made you harder to kill and a better shot because of the purchase you made on the online store that allowed you to have 500 chances on their loot boxes, which they all have a 100% chance of dropping a legendary item. The paying player will no doubt have all the crap they need to win. This makes it so that the free-to-play player has a nightmare of a time while going against somebody who paid for everything, while the person who's paying for everything is just plowing and eating up all the guppies in the ocean. For me, this was quite the experience. I actually did go into PvP, and it was horroring whenever I got my butt smacked down by someone who had everything they needed to win. How is this balanced? How is this matchmaking? I have no idea what they were planning to do when so many people or free-to-play players would just be mad and upset being beaten down by people who were paying. Were they thinking that perhaps because they were beaten by other people who were paying that they should pay too? After the ass whoopings of my life, I decided to not play PvP because I was just sick and tired of either having to follow some guy who paid for everything to win the game or having myself getting beaten down by some people who were paying for the game. Again, this is just not fair, and there was a time I was having fun, but that was earlier off when the game was new. Now we just have a bunch of people who were wailing around, beating each other, and using us free-to-play players as little peons to go in and get ourselves massacred. I was done with that. I didn't write this down in my notebook, but this was just very frustrating that I actually had to turn the game off to cool myself down. I didn't want to play PvP like that ever again. But besides that, I can say that I can praise the cycle of conflict of something that I can conceptually get around with. However, this whole Immortal and Shadows things is just another trap. Think about it. People all over the server are trying to recruit players who are strong. In order to be strong, you need money. The strongest 5 players are pit against each other to see who is the strongest, and unless you have the best stuff, well, skill will not factor too much in the rite of exile. This puts pressure on those who want to prove that they are the best, and the only way to do that is to have strong people in their group and a lot of money. If Rich Campbell proved anything in PvP, all you need is money, and you'll look like this.
He's killing all of them!
Yes! You fucking... Oh my god, they have no gear! Oh, I love PvP! Here they come, here they come, here they come! Oh, he got me, they're womboing me! They're rising up! They're rising up!
Wait.
They're rising up!
What?
I hope I got number 1.
44-0!
This is a pretty good record.
This is a form of encouragement and a certain rise of a toxic community. I've seen in chat people complaining about some people who are trying to join their dark clan. A separate group within the Shadow, I already talked about it, and they were free-to-play players. This caused a bit of discrepancy in the chat, where groups were only accepting players who spent high amounts of money or grinded their asses off to get a high nav Paragon, whom of which most likely spent money since they weren't even allowing people to join if they hadn't bought the best version of the Battle Pass. Absolutely toxic. There were cases where free-to-play players were basically shunned from groups because they had the Paragon, but their legendary gems just didn't stack up with everybody else, thus disqualifying them from entering the group because they really wanted good people to enter the Shadow Wars. This came down to free-to-play players basically begging people who had money to do 10 crest runs with them because they also get the reward. It just, man, it was disgusting actually seeing all the begging in chat. Made me feel kind of sad, really. Everyone's experienced people in chat saying, hey, I'm doing this run, hey, I want to fight this boss, and hey, let's group up and do all this stuff, but never have I ever seen in a chat where people were like, hey, free-to-play player here, we'll kiss your foot and basically suck your dick if I can get in on that 10 crest run. It was absolutely insane, and it tears me to pieces to see people talking like this in chat, especially in a game that could have been good. It's hidden under the BS, of course, but there is a reason why people keep logging into this nightmare. There is a ton of stuff to do for some good number of hours every day. Quests, bounties, Shadows and Immortal events, dungeons, world events, contracts, the Vault, Battlegrounds, Path of Blood, the main story, the challenge rifts, and the Elder Rifts. Even though that's a loot box in disguise, it's still a dungeon you can use to grind resources. The amount of things you can do in a functioning game, albeit cheaply made, is what allows paying and non-paying players to return and try their hands at the delusion that is PvP, even though they're more likely than not going to be stomped out of existence. If a game has things to do, then a game will always be populated, and free-to-play games are usually good at that. I myself fell pretty hard into that trap as well, doing the bounties, the vaults, contracts, and trying to get as much experience for Paragon, even though it would amount to nothing. The game would then drip feed notifications for bundles and show me in chat who's doing what, with party searching for dungeons I need, which by the way is genius and should be looked into by MMO developers. Even did this thing where it kept a red mark on the bell or the notifications, so I would click it to try to get it off, and it would always take me to the shop where there's more bundles that I could buy. It was absolutely skeevy, but I'm getting distracted here. I will also say the chat is filled with people who show their true colors, people trying to party with people who have money, to gain the reward for people doing 10 crest, as I said before. Like, go figure, already in the first few weeks of this game, toxic relationships between players were already growing. It was just festering with this shit. And some of you may ask, well, how are they supposed to get legendary gems? Well, it's not the developer's fault all the way. I would say it's the people above the developers who are telling them to create shit like this, and it's not the player's fault neither, because they are forced to do stuff like this, to basically whore themselves out to get legendary gems because they need to compete in some form or fashion because the game is asking them to do so. No matter how you look at it, the game is really asking you to put your all and your money into being a better player because you have a competition that is part of the core of endgame, and it's also telling you, hey, you need this stuff, you need gems to be more powerful, don't be a weak shit. Maybe you need to ask people for help, but somebody is going to have to pay the money. And because of this core competition, I have thought many times maybe I should spend a little on the side to take that little bit of advantage. But every time I think about the whole mechanic of the Elder Rift and the legendary gems, yeah, I just stopped playing the game. Now I'm gonna have to say this, of course, gems are the most egregious, greedy, messed up power system I have ever seen in a video game, let alone a free-to-play video game. For comparison, most free-to-play games have the same system as Diablo Immortal. However, unlike Diablo, those free-to-play games at least have a way for free players to eventually stand where the paid players are in-game without spending a single dime. Like, as much as I flag on Dissidia Opera Omnia, it at least allows all players to be at the top. You can pay your way to max and reach it much faster, or take the hundreds of hours needed to collect everything in game, participate in every event, check every banner, obtain the right number of resources, and even earn extra resources to obtain weapons and gear you had missed or wasn't lucky enough to win in a banner. To say I have no gripes with all the grinding would be a lie, but at least you can get everything in Dissidia for free if you put all of your time into the game. Diablo Immortal, and this is where I must shut all the people down who says anyone can be at max with paying players, makes it impossible for free-to-play players to be at the maximum level anyone can be. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Dawning Echo, a piece of material essential for maxing out a legendary gem. You see, a legendary gem can be ranked up. Of course, we know this. These gems must be leveled up by gem fragments or other legendary gems that equate to the fragment needed to rank up. At some point, you'll even need a copy of the gem to rank it up, and that's fine by all other means, but what do you think happens at rank 10? When a legendary gem is at rank 10, the leveling only begins. Now you have to go through resonance, and the way to access that is by using a Dawning Echo. The Echo can be purchased two ways, with one being absolutely redundant. The first way is through the shop. Under materials, you'll see a bunch of resources you'll need for reforging. On the second tab, however, you'll see Dawning Echo, which takes you to a page that sells you the material for 1,000 orbs. And remember, these orbs cannot be obtained by any other means except by buying them off the shop with your real currency. And since you can't buy 1,000 orbs outright because of their shitty prices, you'll have to shove out money for the 1,500 orbs every time. Now, the second method is pretty dumb. You have to come and talk to this fellow next to the smithy and buy it off of him from the second tab that also holds materials. The price 1,000 orbs. You see why I said it was redundant? This guy sells you the exact same thing as the store, making this method of him selling you just another means for people to see the Dawning Echo and become curious as to why they need to buy it. And no, this is not a convenience. You have to walk over to the guy and open his menu when you could just open your own shop menu. They do this so that people get interested, so they can see it, so they know the price, because they know they're gonna have to spend money in the future. Now, what does the Dawning Echo do? Well, it takes your maxed out rank 10 legendary gem and awakens it so that you can enhance it more. This allows for resonance growth, allowing the individual to grow by the thousands, more attack power, more defense, more health, and whatnot, even better effects on their abilities. And the way this works is that you have to have more rank 10 gems as to unlock the resonance. See why I said this is only the beginning? This means that in order to max out all of your optimal gems, you'll need to obtain the best one you can get via legendary crest, Fa runes, and regular Elder Rift runs. Max out the rank of the other legendary gems and attach it to the one that's already awakened. Some of them have 2 slots, some of them have 4 slots, some of them have 3 slots, but the ones that you want have 5 slots. And after all that, you have to do it 5 more times, and then your character will be at max. For someone who has too much money or is really loose with money, they'll get there in no time. For free-to-play players, yeah, it's impossible. And it doesn't even matter if you're paying or not, because you're going to be doing thousands of Elder Rift runs to get your legendary gems. And this is the reason why free-to-play players will never stand up to pay-to-win players in PvP. By the way, I can say this for sure after playing a lot of PvP, it's just basically a circle jerk for people who are wealthy. And after all this, PvP not only made me want to put down the game, but it made my anxiety go through the goddamn roof. This was near the end of my Diablo Immortal journey. I was basically tricked into playing this game. There are good elements in there, and I felt like I was playing a solo Diablo game for the most part with a little bit of MMO action on the side, but as soon as I hit endgame, I got a full picture of what I was actually playing. And I had realized that through all of this, I was but one of countless many. The free users who kept this game populated for the spenders to walk over. I saw people like this fellow trying to justify why Diablo Immortal was the best mobile game there ever was for him, which, by his distinction, was the nature of mobile games. Which it isn't. Mobile games are not just free-to-play garbage like Diablo Immortal, Clash of Clans, or Dissidia Opera Omnia. You have to pay to play games here too. Maybe not as many as the free-to-play ones, but they do exist. Mobile is but a peripheral that people can play games on, another console if you will. So, to say that this is the nature of mobile gaming is very disingenuous. You can play practically anything on a phone that isn't free-to-play. There are emulation programs out there that can be downloaded, but for now, free-to-play games are the dominant. It just sucks that free-to-play games are basically what people define mobile gaming, and that's just not fair. There are a lot of games that you can pay for that you can enjoy yourself and not have to spend even more than what it's asking for. $5, $2, $3. It's just sad to see. But at the end of the day, when a casual person or someone who doesn't play as much video games sees the word free, they automatically think that that's a good thing. That's a good game to play, but honestly, anything that has a price would be miles better than the free-to-play garbage that we have that permeates the mobile market. For some reason, we humans associate free to something being good. Not everything that is free will automatically be good or is good by default. You gotta watch out what you were given for free.
Alright, here's the deal. I wanted to review this game. I can't.
Hi everyone, it's Rax bringing you a very important update today. Maxroll has discontinued our Diablo Immortal branch.
I think I've had the traditional Diablo experience that Blizzard has so adamantly promised Diablo Immortal would provide.
Many of the key issues are still not fixed, and the free-to-play experience is worse than we could have ever imagined. Yes, 100% yes.
I don't think any other game company could do what they've done with monetization in 6 years.
If you have a degree in psychology, I was talking to a friend of mine who is studying psychology, and they were talking about job prospects in the future. One of the fastest growing employment areas for anyone with a degree in psychology is game design. Not for quests, not for characters, not for story, for monetization and shop. If you have a degree in mathematics, if you have a degree in psychology, companies want you to design their in-game shops. Let's just talk about all the things, because Diablo Immortal is, I think, going to be a case study in the future, especially in game design courses, for how well you can monetize something.
What I want to leave off here are questions that I want others to ask themselves. Why must gaming go towards this free-to-play way of distribution? Why are we, the consumer, so complacent and forgiving with games coming out like this? Why are we spending thousands of dollars on one video game we're invested in, be they resources or cosmetics? What is wrong with looking to the past to find a better future for gaming? Because as far as I could see, gaming culture will lean towards games like Diablo Immortal because of just how much money they make by manipulating their consumers. What I fear most is that we are leaning towards a future where gaming is dictated by how much money you have over the essence of it being a genuinely fun game to play. And listen, if you're having fun with Diablo Immortal, more power to you, but you have to realize what this is doing to gaming culture. What happened to having fun with the video game for it being fun and not just having fun gaining all the rewards? Because that's all a free-to-play game is. A dopamine triggering visualizer that makes you think that getting rewards, upgrading power, and seeing large numbers is what makes the game fun. I mean, getting rewards in the games for the things that you do in-game is fun, but they give you a whole bunch of rewards like every second, every minute, every time to fuel that dopamine, and I think it's being used in the wrong way. Well, I mean, as business goes, they're using it the right way, but you know what I mean. It's almost like psychological abuse if you look at it in a different way. Again, I must refer to this fellow, who outright says they are a gambler.
Of running a rift, having a chance at finding something. I'm a gambler. That makes me happy.
Gambling isn't a good thing, and at the same time, it isn't a bad thing. It's a neutral activity with a 50-50 chance of something good or bad happening, and the one who gambles must take responsibility for either outcome. The word responsibility is the key word here. Kids who will be playing free-to-play games will have that same responsibility, but they're kids, and the concept isn't fully there. Jack Black's son racked up $3,000 in one day. One day of playing some sort of monster game that was marketed to children. This not only teaches children and teens that spending money for conveniences like Wildfire is okay, but it can and will put the parents into a terrible looking spot. Parents can only control their children so much, and if it's not something they know, like video games or the freemium concept in free-to-play mobile games, it's not common sense to them, they may end up with several problems they couldn't have seen coming. Like, how are they supposed to know, since they don't have anything to do with video games? They're a working class adult. They're not always watching their kids, but then they see a $10,000 bill out of nowhere because they let their kids download games. They're not into that stuff. They're not into gaming. They won't know. And they try to blame it on other things like the government or something like that, or even the game companies themselves. But the companies will not take responsibility for that, and at most, if they get sued, well, there's a payout or they take the bill off. These games are made to be addicting, and these kids will become obsessed with the game, but they may not only just spend their parents' money, but they could spend their own money, allowances, part-time job. It doesn't matter. And yes, you can spend your own allowance. All you have to do is get a Walmart gift card. Now, I'm an adult, and I don't have the concept fully retained, responsibility when it comes to gambling activities in video games, and I live on the internet. That is because of my nature, however. My nature, to put it simply, is to be daring and lackadaisical. I see simply the joys of spending money without thinking carefully or the consequences, having no real attachment to money, and constantly looking for entertainment. I have, after going through psychological assessment and a ton of therapy, realized my nature only about 9 months ago. This has led me to come to the conclusion that I cannot touch another free-to-play game ever again, and my therapist agrees. I used myself to show you what I saw in Diablo Immortal. It is because I experienced the worst cases myself that I can say what Blizzard created was not a game. It wasn't a video game, but another means of gambling one's money away for trivial things. turning casuals and fans into a spendthrift, throwing away their savings and pocket money for a slight experience of naturally chemically induced exhilaration, turning the free-to-play guppies into bait while the whales jump in and have their way with them in PvP, somehow convincing people that everyone can walk side by side while paying players are walking 30 kilometers ahead of the non-payers. What you're actually walking next to is a shadow clone that's keeping you company. And I know I have problems with games like this, but I'm not the only one out there. There is actually more of me out there than are people who are willing to just not pay to play this game. And the sad part is that they're just not willing to admit it, or they just don't know themselves. Fact of the matter is that some of us can't put the controller down. Some of us can't help but spend, finding excuses like supporting the company or saying it's not a lot of money. Of course, you can spend money if you want to, no one's stopping you, and I'm not telling you to stop. But when the dollar amount is in the hundreds, you done fucked up. When it's in the thousands, what the fuck is wrong with you? I'm gonna say this right now, and it may upset some people. No video game ever needs to become free to play. It's an option, and that's all it'll ever be. Companies choose to take the option for more or less financial and monetary success. The game itself is less significant than the margin of financial gain. And yeah, I know that people like to say that free-to-play games have many updates and they're a lot sooner, but have we taken a look at these updates and see what they're all about? Genshin Impact has plenty of updates all the time, but is the story finished? No, it wasn't even finished when it came out. The story was broken into pieces, and updates on that are separated from other smaller patches. You usually find more waifus and more husbandos from Genshin Impact and updates on that, rather than the story itself. And when Genshin Impact puts in that final patch for the story and it actually does have an ending, then I'll go ahead and play it. But I'm gonna have to wait 10 years for that, I'm pretty sure. And how about the City Opera Omnia? Story is updated regularly, but it's kind of banal. What people are actually waiting for are the banners that have new weapons that can unlock new abilities for one of their hundreds of characters that they also put on their banners. New characters that have new abilities that may change the meta of the game. As of right now, Diablo Immortal doesn't have any significant updates at the time of this video being produced. But I'm sure they're going to come out with better ways to get gems, a story update perhaps, or maybe even a new tier of power creep for people to spend their money on. Hell, they might actually have the Dawning Echo available for free-to-play users, and if that happens, I'll do a follow-up video describing my time with that. Hopefully I don't relapse. Listen, you gotta keep this in mind. No matter how much you love a company, they will never love you back. They will never do something if they don't have a gain in it too. And when a company goes free to play, it's not for the player's benefit, but for their financial balancing. Remember, when it comes to AAA game companies, they aren't game companies anymore. They're companies who make games and will do anything for the next business venture. Games do not need to be free to play. The company makes that decision to do so. Whether you think the free-to-play game is ethical, which doesn't apply to me due to my nature, or perhaps the company has a positive reception, video games do not need to be free to play. It doesn't matter if it's Path of Exile, Genshin Impact, or even Diablo Immortal. Companies choose what games go free to play, and due to today's gaming culture, they'll more likely than not try to make as much money off their players as they possibly can. I just hope that my experience in this long as fuck video can help someone out there make the right decision and leave free-to-play games well enough alone, because I believe that free-to-play games either need to drastically change or disappear off the face of the earth. But that's just my opinion, and it comes from an experience that's pretty much the worst that you could possibly have. I suggest if you think you have some sort of issue that is similar to mine, seek therapy, find friends, stay with family, because sometimes you just can't do this alone, and therapy really does help. Alright, this is like, I don't know how many takes I've tried to do with this, but I'm gonna have to try and do this as fast as possible. Also, it's really hot right now. It's like, I don't know, 70 degrees in my room. No fan and air conditioner's not on, so we're gonna do this as fast as possible. First of all, if you made it to the end of the video, thank you very much. There's some things I want to talk about before we end this video. For one, why did I make this video in the first place if you knew you had a problem? That's probably the biggest question a lot of people are gonna ask, and here's my answer. I've been trying to figure a way to do something about my financial issues, and what I mean by financial issues, me spending too much money on stupid shit, and one of those things that was a purveyor of that was free-to-play games. Now, 9 months ago, I got in contact with friends, family, and my therapist to go on this journey. My therapist didn't like this, but they thought that perhaps there has to be a way to finally get through this, so they suggested exposure therapy. And I was on a time clock every single day, 1 or 2 hours, didn't get too deep. I didn't want to spend any money, so every time I felt like that, like I said in the video, I wrote it down and I shut off the game and I came back hours later. And so far, I feel as though I don't have to spend money in free-to-play games right now. If that is out of the way, does that mean you can just play free-to-play games without... No. The answer is no. I can't go back and play free-to-play games ever again. It's like, somebody picking up alcohol, and after they're not drinking alcohol for like 2 years, they've been enough of the stuff, starting back on may restart or kick that habit back up, and that's the same exact thing with free-to-play games with me. I don't want to, I shouldn't, I can't. I don't want to touch or look at free-to-play games ever again, which means that I have to cut out a lot of things in my life. No more, The City Opera Omnia, no more Octopath Champions of the Continent, even though I really did like that game. That has to be cut out. I really like Multiverses. Gotta cut that out, It's a free-to-play game. Can't do it anymore. And, Overwatch 2. Can't play that when it comes out. Gotta cut that out. So, when it comes to why I did this, why I made this video, why go through the exposure therapy, is because I wanted to do this for me. I wanted to change myself. This is something that I've been dealing with for over a decade. Then I thought I stopped and got rid of that, about over 2 years ago. I was wrong, and the habit kicked in, and I didn't realize how much money I was spending. My friends played free-to-play games, and they don't spend a single dime, and I tried not spending a single dime, but I realized that I was wasting my time playing something that really doesn't feel like it was really rewarding me, because those little doses of rewards that they give you in free-to-play games it's all temporary, and then it goes away, then you have a new mission. They really want you to keep playing the game. And to me, and from what I found out with my personality, there is no free-to-play game that's kosher. There is no friendly free-to-play game. There is no gacha system that's not as bad. There's nothing that is not as bad, or it's okay. It's not as in your face as everybody else. No, there's no such thing. It's all of them. It's all of them. It's all the freemium gacha-based shenanigans. It's all of them. It's all the free-to-play games. So I have to cut it out of my life. And with that being said, I do have a pledge. I vowed that I will never touch, play, or interact with any free-to-play games ever again. They are cut out of my life. I will not go back. I will be deleting all the sources of free-to-play games. I'm going to get rid of Pokemon Unite off my Switch, get it off my phone, get it off my computer. If there's a game that comes out that is free-to-play, completely ignore it. I'm going to shut it out of my life. This is a pledge. And I'm going to go even further. On my streams, for as long as I want to, I'm going to have hashtag, here it is, playing real video games. I don't think free-to-play games are actually video games. They're money machines, honestly. They're like, I don't even know what to call it. They're just poison. I honestly really thought that free-to-play games were kind of like a poison to the gaming industry and gaming as a culture. It really doesn't need to be here. Like, there was a purity of just buying a game, going home and playing it over the weekend, and you can go back and play it again. You played the game whenever you want. You enjoyed yourself. There was no need to spend extra money. There was no need to be bombarded by ads. There was no need to go through like an advertisement because you had to click a button and it says, advertise here, you get free stuff. There's no need for that. I can go back and play my favorite games. I can go back and play Banjo-Kazooie whenever I want. I can play Final Fantasy XIV, which is the MMO that I play, for $15 a month, which people will say, like, compare that to free-to-play games. You have to pay $15. It doesn't even matter. I pay $10, by the way, but it doesn't matter if I'm paying it monthly. That's just $10 a month. That's a regular bill. I'm an adult, right? I make money, no full-time. $10, drop in the pan. That's all it is. Honestly, they deliver every time. Every 3 months, a patch, they fixed their mistakes, their expansions were great, the game is good, I love it. So it's like, I'm spending money a month to play a good game, I guess? People have a lot of issues with subscriptions, but we'll get to that issue later. What's more important is that I'm done. I'm never doing anything free to play. I don't want to touch free to play ever again. I'm never going to interact with them. I will not play them while I'm outside or going to my parents' house or on the bus or on a train or at the park. I can actually touch grass without looking at my phone and being like, oh man, I hope I make this or something like that. No, I can finally be free of that. And I think I'll have better control with my finances. And I know I'm not 100% cured with like my money throwing awayness because it's still a process, but the biggest thing is out of the way. And I'm glad. So thank you. If you've made it to this part of the video, thank you very much. You're probably seeing maybe credits on the screen somewhere, and then probably a box with 2 videos and my symbol somewhere in the middle. But I do want to say this before you go, that I do have a Patreon up, and I'm going to be doing stuff with my Patreon with that, $1 a month. That's all it's going to take for me to bring out more videos like these, and for you guys to give me direct suggestions on what I should do. Last time, a lot of people told me to do World of Warcraft Classic. That's interesting, but we'll see what that's all about. What I really want to do, and this is the next thing that I want to do, I do have plans with Dragonflight when that comes out, and I do have particular games that I want to look at as a series to show how great they were. I don't know, there are choices. Anyway, thanks for watching my video. You guys have a good night. It's night over here, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. I should be going to bed, and so should you if it's in the middle of the night. And if you're watching this during the day, have a good day. Bye.
Your heart ain't cold stone, forget about the power. Battle this out to the 24th hour. Pay the price that you couldn't deal with. Cold-blooded killers in my lockdown clique. Got no time to waste, we taking time bombs. Street Fighter 3 like a star. Y'all make your first move, so what's it gonna be? You're trapped in a new world of Street Fighter 3. For the 3rd chapter, so what's it gonna be? You're trapped in a new world of Street Fighter 3. Make your first move, so what's it gonna be? You're trapped in a new world of Street Fighter 3. For the 3rd chapter, so what's it gonna be? You're trapped in a new world of Street Fighter 3. Rock what you got, block what you shot.